I honestly feel like I say this about every single new chapter of Tokyo Ghoul Ray, but that is probably the best chapter of Tokyo Ghoul Ray that I've ever read. I'm not sure if it's better than some of the chapters we got in part 1, but holy shit was this chapter unbelievable. But before we get into the actual review, before we get into the good stuff and all the amazing things I have to say about this chapter, there is one really minor, very minor qualm I have with this chapter, and I want to get that out of the way first, which is why you see the mini rant in the title of this video. So let's talk about Eto's death here. I don't have a problem with Eto dying in itself, because I think it's been foreshadowed that she could die for a while, and it would bring a little bit of closure to her character for her to die. I just have a problem with the way that she was potentially killed off, because we don't actually know if she was killed off, but if she's indeed dead, I have a problem with the way she was killed off, because her fight with Furuta, which is the thing that caused her death, that was all off screen. So she basically died from an off-screen fight, which I do have a problem with. Like I said, it pales in comparison to the rest of the epic shit that we got this chapter, but unlike Arma, who we saw that entire fight with Kaneki, we saw everything, we got some backstory on Arma, but with Eto, she just kind of fought Furuta and then died. It's just not a great way to kill off a character, so that is my only qualm with the chapter, but otherwise, amazing chapter like I said. So let's get into the good stuff here. I guess we'll start off here with some of the less exciting stuff, and then I want to slowly build my way to the end of the chapter, which was so hype. But anyways, let's start off here with the discussion of Toka, because it's basically revealed in this chapter, and from what we can glean from the last chapter as well, that Toka's a very powerful ghoul. She's gotten a lot stronger as of this chapter in comparison to part 1, because she's basically able to hold off the attacks of two very powerful special class investigators, and granted, if not for the Zero Squad's interference, she probably would have lost and would have died, but she was still able to take them on. And speaking of the special class investigators, Kyoko Ora is a badass. We've been waiting for her to reveal her true strength for a while now, and she revealed it in this chapter. She is strong. She's a very powerful ghoul investigator, from what we can see. So the fight between the investigators and ghouls keeps going, and it's pretty evident after a while that despite how much Toka's improved, the investigators have a big upper hand on the ghouls, and they're about to take them out when Squad Zero arrives, and Squad Zero's arrival to me is pretty cool for two reasons. The first reason why it's cool is that I anticipate that the members of Squad Zero could be potential allies for Kaneki, because they're sort of half ghouls. They're not really half ghouls, you can't really consider them to be half ghouls, but they do have ghoul mothers, so they could definitely sympathize with someone like Kaneki who's a half ghoul. So I anticipate that Squad Zero is going to become a major ally of Kaneki in the future. But secondly, Hirako, this motherfucker prepared a letter of resignation just so he could hand it to his colleagues in the middle of battle. It was the ultimate middle finger to the CCG. I wasn't really all that interested in Hirako when he first appeared in the series, but he's grown on me a lot, and this chapter has just cemented his legacy as one of the coolest characters. Okay, maybe one of the coolest characters is an exaggeration, but what he did in this chapter was pretty badass. Now here's where things start to get heavy in this chapter, because we get a clarification on Eto's earlier statement, and her earlier statement was basically saying that there's no need for Kaneki to kill the One-Eyed King anymore, which would imply that the One-Eyed King is Arma, and we later get in the chapter confirmation that the One-Eyed King is Arma. Ishida just flat out says the One-Eyed King is Arma, basically. But it goes a lot deeper than that. Not only is Arma the One-Eyed King, but he and Eto have basically been cooperating for the entire series. They have been allies, and whether they were directly cooperating and consistently talking to one another, or whether it was indirect cooperation where they were both just sort of working towards the same goal, and after that conversation they had that was shown in this chapter, they both just sort of implicitly knew what to do, I'm not sure which of those options it is, but they were working together. They were working towards the same goal. And this changes everything. If you go back and read Tokyo Ghoul right now, everything has changed. That fight with Eto and Arma at the end of part 1, that has completely new meaning. Everything that Arma has said so far, everything that Eto has said so far, all of it takes on a new meaning, because the two were basically working together the entire time. And the people that we thought were bad at the beginning of the series, Arma and Eto, are in fact the good guys, and the bad guys in this series are the Washus, the CCG. I really can't emphasize enough how much this changes the entire path of the series, and if Eto has indeed died, and with Arma's death as well, Kaneki now can take on the mantle of the One-Eyed King. Everything in this series so far has been to prepare Kaneki in order for him to take on the title of the One-Eyed King. And that is what we finally get at the end of this chapter. Kaneki comes down from the ceiling and declares, "I am the One-Eyed King," and the chapter ends. The ending to this chapter was brilliant. Just the build-up, the way it was done, the way Ishida presented all the material, blowing your mind with one panel after another, and then finally building up to that final panel where Kaneki declares that he is the One-Eyed King. It was amazingly done. Also, all of this shit was foreshadowed from the very beginning, and that's evident in the title of Tokyo Ghoul Rei. It turns out that in many languages, Rei means king. So the fact that Kaneki was essentially destined to become the One-Eyed King has been foreshadowed since the very start of this manga in the title. This is the climax of this manga. Kaneki becoming the king is the climax of this manga because of the title of this manga. The manga is basically called Tokyo Ghoul King. Kaneki becoming the king implies that this is the climax. This chapter is the most important part, the tipping point of this series. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is I think with this chapter, Tokyo Ghoul Rei is close to its end because Kaneki has become the One-Eyed King, which seems to be the goal of this part of the manga. I think there's a high chance, not necessarily a high chance, but there's a good chance that maybe there will be a part 3 after this once Tokyo Ghoul Rei ends, and that part 3 will be all about Kaneki and the rest of the ghouls taking on the Washu and finishing off everything in this series. Before you guys go, I've got one last thing to say, and this is a theory I have regarding Kaneki's Kakucha, because at the very end of this chapter on the second to last page, we see Kaneki in what I think is a new Kakucha form. We did see some hints of it against Arma, but we definitely have not seen Kaneki use this full form just yet, which makes me question, how did Kaneki get the power to be able to use this form? Because I don't think he had the ability to use it against Arma, because if he did, I think we would have seen it. So how did he get this ability? It's possible that Kaneki had it the entire time and it was just lying latent within him, but what I think is potentially more likely is Kaneki ate Eto. Kaneki ate Eto and used Eto's power to be able to manifest this new Kakucha. I personally think that this makes a lot of sense when you think about Eto's motivations, which were touched on in this chapter, but also it would be a really nice parallel for both Arma and Eto to die as martyrs in order to make Kaneki stronger. Eto and Arma have been grooming Kaneki to become the One-Eyed King, and it would make a lot of sense for Eto to go out here by making Kaneki stronger and effectively crowning him as the One-Eyed King with this new Kakucha. Alright guys, well that is pretty much going to do it for this video. I do want to apologize as well for not getting up reviews for Tokyo Ghoul Rei for a long time now. I will try and get back on that, especially after this chapter. This manga is going to be really good. So hopefully you guys can look forward to more Tokyo Ghoul reviews and live reactions in the future. Otherwise, I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll see you in my next video.